Welcome to Stayf Draws. I'm Stayf van de Groot, a Dutch illustrator and animator, and in this video I'm going to show you the best watercolor brush for the iPad. I've always been a big fan of the silly symphonies and especially the backgrounds, and they were all done in watercolors, and I found one from the Wise Little Hand in a book called Layout and Background, and I'll leave a link in the description box down below. There you can find a lot of layouts and also the backgrounds. They are really printed well, and here you can see the Wise Little Hand background, and here you can see another background from that same movie, and on top you see the layout and underneath the background. So I want to test out this new brush, and I just made a copy of the line art, and I'm just going to approach it like you would paint a normal watercolor painting, and that's always done in building up the colors, because in watercolors you work from light to dark. So I really tested out this brush to make this background of the Wise Little Hand, and that's a silly symphony where Donald Duck made his debut, and the movie is from 1934. When you're studying these backgrounds, you can see the great artistry that went into making these backgrounds, and I just tried to build it up like a normal watercolor painting. And I've been looking for a good digital watercolor brush forever, but I never could find it, and now it's finally available for the iPad. And this watercolor brush is called the Wet Edge brush by Kyle T. Webster, and you really need to get used to it, but it has the same characteristics as painting with real watercolor, because it shows the edges of a watercolor. So if you're doing watercolor on paper, you always have to watch the edges, so you need to fill it up with water to avoid the edges. And you can use that same technique with this Wet Edge brush by Kyle T. Webster, and I did this entire painting with just this brush. And the great thing about it is that this is a default brush in Adobe Photoshop Sketch. I'm just gonna show you a detail of doing some paintings on the painting itself, because I'm now using the display. You can see here how I build up the colors. I'm now working on the background, and you can see that there are these edges, and also when you're working with blues and greens, they also have a little bit of a grain into the paint, and that's the same when you are using blues with watercolors. You always try to avoid the grain, and this is how I build up the flowers. So you start out very with light colors, and you build it up slowly. The great thing about watercolors is that it has a certain luminosity to it, and it's different than all other medium you're working in. And I think that this brush really comes closest to working in watercolors. But you really need to practice how to use this brush, because when you paint and then leave the canvas with your Apple Pencil, you will get the borders. But when you keep your Apple Pencil on the screen, you will keep the paint wet and avoid the edges. And this is another quick study I did in watercolors, and here's another one. This is one of my favorite illustrators. It's Brian Froud, and I just tried to make a study of his painting just using this same watercolor brush. So if you want to paint watercolors, use the Wet Edge brush by Kyle T. Webster in the drawing app Adobe Photoshop Sketch. I'll leave a link to Adobe Photoshop Sketch to the App Store, but it's also available on Android. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you like it, please give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to hit that notification bell, because each time I upload a new video, you get a notification. Drawing is fun, and practice makes perfect. See you next time. Doodles! If you want to learn how to draw and paint in Adobe Photoshop Sketch, it's now available as a video manual on iBooks and also on Vimeo On Demand. And I'll leave links in the description below this video.